Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the TRISTEL investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time throughout today's presentation using the Q&A tab just on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type in your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during today's meeting. However, the company can review all questions and will publish those responses where it's appropriate to do so on the Investor Meet Company platform. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll, and as usual, I'm sure the company will be most grateful for your participation. I'd now like to hand over to Paul Swinney, CEO. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you all, and very, very warm welcome. From our side, we've myself, Liz, Julia, and Heidi. I think you know all of us, probably Liz and I more so than Heidi and Julia, but these are our colleagues who have been driving forward the North American project. And if we could just change the slide, this is it. It's a momentous moment. It's a momentous day for your company. We, over the weekend, received a notification from the Food and Drug Administration in the United States that they have approved us for sale in that country. The FDA is the best known, and I would go so far as to say, perhaps, and kindly, the most notorious, the most demanding regulatory body in the world. And we have met all of the challenges that they set us and have received their approval of our de novo application for our high-level disinfectant product, Duo. We've renamed it ALT, for the disinfection of ultrasound probes. And it's a remarkable achievement. To put it in context, I've been looking at some of the chat comments this morning. A number of people have said it's taken a long time. Well, the FDA has not approved a high-level disinfectant for a new high-level disinfectant for over 13 or 14 years. And we're the first British company to have achieved this since a company that disappeared from sight back in 2006 or 7, I believe. So I think it's a remarkable achievement and positions us well to build upon the global presence that we have created, of course, outside of the United States, and now embrace North America, the United States, and continue our journey in building a very significant business worldwide. So thank you for staying with us. It's taken a lot of patience and perseverance. Thank you to the team, but it really is a phenomenal achievement. So let's go to the next slide, if we may. We've not only been focusing upon the regulatory challenge of the FDA, but we've at the same time been laying down the foundation stones of the business that we are going to create in North America. Those of you that have been shareholders and at our presentations over the course of the last several years will know that we have a business partner in the States, actually in North America and South America, Parker Laboratories, based in New Jersey. We have a distributor for another one of our approvals, which is for ophthalmic devices as a high-level disinfectant, a product called Duo 2 for ophthalmic devices based in Toronto, Medical Ophthalmics, and they are very active right now in opening up the Canadian market for the high-level disinfection of such devices. And we've established our subsidiary in Massachusetts, where we will be building our operation. So it's now about execution. I know that, and we have not been idle waiting for regulatory approval. We've been laying the foundation stones to build out the business. So the next slide will tell us something more about ultrasound, which is the focus of the first approval. The picture is in the center is of a traditional ultrasound console. It is at this console that the sonographer sits, looks at the screen, and is either using a skin surface transducer, as shown on the left-hand slide, or an endocavity probe on the right-hand side, maneuvering it in and around the body to capture an ultrasound image and interpret it. It's a complex piece of kit. It's manufactured and sold by a whole host of different companies, including GE, Philips, Toshiba, Siemens, all the great multinational medical device manufacturers. And ultrasound is a really important technology within the hospital. Increasingly, it's used for a plethora of diagnostic purposes. It's even used in the emergency department to triage patients that have been in road accidents or other types of experience other types of calamity, and they're using ultrasound to see whether there's an internal bleeding. I've heard it described as today's equivalent of the stethoscope. The skin surface transducer comes in contact with the skin. The endocavity probe, which you can see on the right-hand side, as its shape and dimension suggests, goes into one of the orifices of the body. And those two orifices are the vagina and the rectum for internal examinations. On the right-hand side is how technology in the ultrasound space is developing. It's going mobile. Wi-Fi enabled, smart device, a link to a skin surface probe or an intracavity probe, and it becomes increasingly mobile. As you can see, the console has wheels, but to wheel it around a hospital with the electricity supply and all the rest of that goes with it is rather cumbersome. Mobile ultrasound is the way of the future. We happen to be a mobile high-level disinfectant product. Let's look at the next slide. This is the Spalding classification. It was developed by an individual called Spalding in the 50s, and it really defines how we segment the market, how regulators segment disinfection. It drives our branding and our marketing strategy and our regulatory approach. Skin surface ultrasound transducers come in contact normally with intact, healthy skin. And so the disinfection requirement for such devices is very low. They only require, according to the Spalding classification, low-level disinfection. And in some instances, it's better to be basic, intermediate, which is a slightly higher grade of disinfection. The product that we have approved in the United States with another agency, the EPA, is classed as an intermediate level disinfectant. But those instruments that come into contact with the mucosa, the sort of semi-permeable and moist membranes of the body, including the vaginal wall lining or the rectal wall lining, they pose a higher risk and they're defined as semi-critical medical devices and require high-level disinfection. It's a higher grade of disinfection, and the microbiologists have their terminology universally understood as to what the differences are between HLD and ILD or LLD. And the approval that we have received over the weekend is for TRISTEL Alt as a high-level disinfectant for ultrasound probes that are invasive and classified for use on semi-critical medical devices. This is very relevant to the way that we build the business out and our regulatory strategy that we've pursued. So moving to the next slide, you can see how the two regulatory bodies in the United States have shaped our approach to the marketplace. The FDA has jurisdiction over high-level disinfectants. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has jurisdiction over intermediate and low-level disinfection. And so we've had to create for the United States market two products. We are in the unbelievably strong position competitively to be able to present to the market both an HLD and an ILD, thereby presenting a solution for every one of the ultrasound probes and transducers that are used throughout the country. On the left-hand side, you can see that the part of the probe that goes inside the body, that's the part that requires high-level disinfection and is colored in pink. The rest of and on the right-hand side, that's a skin surface transducer that is attached to the console by a cord. Well, all the skin surface transducer, because of its Spalding classification, and all of the rest of the console and the cord require intermediate or low-level disinfection. We've colored them in blue to signify where our Duo product is to be used. And if you piece the two pictures together, you can see that our two products can do every part of an ultrasound system for whatever use that may be put to in the United States with appropriate regulatory authorization. And on the next slide, we can see how we have built or laid one of those key foundation stones, which is to have put in place already a manufacturing partner for the Americas, both North and South, and in the ultrasound marketplace, our distribution partner. And it's a company called Parker Laboratories. It's a family-owned business. They were founded in the 1950s. And what they make and what they sell are the gels. They're called transmission gels that are used in every single ultrasound scan. You put the gel onto the transducer, the membrane through which the image is transmitted, and it enhances the image. So it's universally, every single ultrasound scan involves the use of a gel, an ultrasound transmission gel. And Parker is, both in the United States and indeed probably worldwide, a market leader in the manufacture and sale of these transmission gels. They in fact invented them back in the 1950s. Parker's manufacturing facility is approved by the FDA. It's regularly audited by the agency, and they have been appointed by us some years ago, in actual fact, to be our manufacturing partner. But they're also our distribution partner. They have a national network of some 300 distributors, cover the whole country. They are large and small. They include all of the largest, best known GPOs and distributors in the country, the likes of Henry Schein, Verizion, and all of the big names. And it's a sizable company, albeit privately owned, and has revenues of about $60 million. They are our partner for both manufacture and distribution into the ultrasound marketplace. So it's in place, it's contractually signed, sealed, and delivered. We've had a renegotiation, which we're going to speak to in a short while, about the commercial and financial division of spoils. But it's a very sound relationship, which is all set and ready to go. So moving to the next slide, if we may. Yes, it is a strong partnership. And it's strong fundamentally because for every ultrasound scan, there are two products that need to be deployed: a gel and a disinfectant. And in combining our intermediate level and high level disinfectant products with Parker's gels and sheaths, we can be used in every single ultrasound scan in the country. Now, by our estimate, there are some 215 million ultrasound scans carried out in the United States annually. And it's a growing number because ultrasound use is increasing, as I mentioned earlier. Of those consoles, the traditional consoles, there are, by our key competitors' estimate, it's their data, there are 271,000 traditional ultrasound consoles throughout the United States healthcare system. Many will be in hospitals, some will be in ambulatory care centers, some will be in IVF clinics, obstetrics and gynae office suites in towns all over the country. And on the right-hand side, the picture is repeated of the growing aspect of the technology, which is mobile ultrasound. And it will proliferate. It will become a more and more widely used mobile ultrasound as we look into the future. Moving to the next slide, if we may. So let's look at our business model. We have at least three indications that we use or that we have regulated and approved by regulators around the world for our basic duo chemistry and pack. We have an indication for ultrasound probes and transducers. We have an indication for ophthalmic devices, and we have an indication for nasendoscopes. These are small endoscopes that are used in nasal investigations, including the vocal cords. They go down to, the instrument goes down to the vocal cords. We will in time seek further approvals from the FDA for the 2 indications of OPH and ORL. The business model with Parker is that they will be our manufacturer for each of the indications, starting with ULT for the Americas, and they will be our distributor for ULT in the Americas. And for OPH and ORL, we will be free to select any distribution channel that we want to. We are not tied to Parker for those 2 use patterns for our Duo product. Going to the next slide. And these are the commercial and financial arrangements. Parker will manufacture ULT and for the ultrasound market space at cost. And for the other clinical areas, the non-Parker sales channels, OPH and ORL, they will charge us a standard contract manufacturer's margin, which is typically 35%. Within the ultrasound marketplace, Parker will be paying us a royalty on their net sales of TRISTEL ULT, which is the high-level disinfectant approved by the FDA. The percentage is 24%. And of TRISTEL Duo, which is our intermediate level disinfectant approved by the EPA, the royalty is 20%. The royalty will show in our financial statements as revenue, subject to the auditors, our auditors, Grant Thornton, agreeing with our treatment. We will show it as a line, a separate line within revenue, but it will be included in revenue. And that's how the contribution, financial contribution, will flow through our accounts from this arrangement with Parker. To the next slide. This is the competitive landscape in the United States. For endocavity ultrasound probes requiring high-level disinfection, it's illustrative. We can't be precise about percentages and numbers, but we're pretty confident that this reflects the lie of the land. There is an Australian manufactured product called Trophon. It's made by a company called Nanosonics, which you would have heard me mention many times in the past. And we have no reason to dispute their data, believe they account for about 50% of the ultrasound market in the United States. The other 2 methods, and let me describe it, is the picture is on the left-hand side. It's a box. It's a machine controlled by a microprocessor, powered by electricity. The disinfectant chemistry that's used inside the box is hydrogen peroxide, which they make into a vapor, which surrounds the ultrasound probe. It has a contact time of 7 minutes. The chemistry has to be used, I think it's 50 degrees, so the machine has to warm the chemistry up, or has to warm up before the chemistry can be used, and has to warm down before the nurse can take the instrument out because it's rather hot. So the whole cycle time is certainly 10 minutes plus. It's a machine. You open the box, you open the door, you put your probe in, you push a button, the hydrogen peroxide is nebulized, you wait, you open the door, and you take out the instrument, and it is high-level disinfected. The other 2 methodologies that are commonplace in the United States, and we believe they account for pretty much 50-50 of the remaining scans that are not undertaken in Trophon, are either achieved by soaking the probe and transducer in a liquid chemical. There's a picture on the right-hand side of a product called Astra that is manufactured by a company called Civco, and you can see the healthcare worker is loading the probe into a chamber inside that box, and inside there is a liquid. It probably will be peracetic acid, and the instrument will soak in there for a period of time, can be as long as 10 minutes or more before the probe is taken out and then has to be rinsed before it comes into contact with the next patient. And then there's a third category of scans and the method by which they're disinfected or not disinfected, which is kind of it's the unauthorized, non-compliant practice that exists in the United States, as it does in all other countries. There will be wipes that are used that are not of an appropriate classification. In other words, they're not high-level disinfectants. And in quite a number of instances, the sonographer or the healthcare establishment will be relying upon a sheath or a condom to cover the probe as it goes into the patient and presume that it acts as a barrier to stop the transmission of pathogens from one patient to another. It's not an appropriate methodology. It's not acceptable to the regulators, but in some instances, it's just done. So there are various chemistries that have been approved by the FDA as high-level disinfectants, peracetic acids and aldehydes, and there are inappropriate methodologies and products that are used. Each and every one of those segments is a target for us as we establish our market share in the United States. So moving to the next paragraph, this is a rogues gallery of the low-level disinfectants that are widely used. 4 examples that probably are the market leaders. They're all tubs of pre-wetted, pre-saturated wipes. I think without exception, they're all quaternary ammonium compounds. It's the same kind of chemistry that we would use in the home as in a bottle or a trigger spray or a wipe like Dettol wipes. And some of the products contain bleach and hydrogen peroxide. Now, it's interesting to note that of those 215 million scans that take place by our estimation in the United States, we estimate, and it's a sort of rule of thumb that we believe holds true across the world, 20% of them are for endocavity probes, the probes going into the body requiring high-level disinfection, and 80% are skin surface probes, and they only require intermediate or low-level disinfection. So the split is 80% low-level disinfection or intermediate and 20% high-level. And that defines the market opportunities and the total addressable market for our 2 approved products in the States. On to the next. This is important to us. Mobile ultrasound, as illustrated in the couple of the previous slides, is growing far more fast at a far higher rate than the growth of traditional ultrasound as embodied by the traditional on-wheels console. And I think it's not difficult to understand why that would be. A mobile ultrasound requires mobile high-level disinfection. You're familiar with our products. We've had pack shots in the presentation. They're handheld. The foam is applied by hand. You can put the pack in your pocket, your white coat. You can walk around the hospital with it. Mobile ultrasound has a similar characteristic. It is put into the pocket and it's carried to the point in time and used where it's needed. For that, you need a high-level disinfection that can travel with it. You cannot wheel at ease a traditional ultrasound console around a hospital to marry up with the use of mobile ultrasound. It just logistically can't happen. So we can see that the number of ultrasound scans that we're relevant to will be growing across the United States as a direct consequence of our products being available to hospitals. And there's another driver of growth of high-level disinfection procedures and scans that require high-level disinfection. And that is because ultrasound is increasingly being used to help the catheterization of patients. And aged patients where it's difficult to find a vein, there's growing obesity. We all recognize it as a huge problem. It's very difficult to find a vein. It's very difficult to catheterize. And rather than stick a patient multiple times trying to find that vein, if you've got an skin surface ultrasound transducer, you can find it at ease. It's safer, and it's certainly a lot less painful for the patient. But when that skin surface ultrasound transducer, which classically has been considered to be low risk, is in the proximity of a skin puncture site, all of a sudden that procedure becomes high risk. And if it was affordable and if it was available, I think most sonographers in the United States, as evidenced by lobbying that is very prominent and current at the moment. They would prefer to use high-level disinfection if it was available to them. And one of the key characteristics of our alt product is, as I've said, I repeat again, it's mobile, it's easily deployable, it never breaks down, and it doesn't require capital investment. So we do believe that the number of ultrasound procedures that require high-level disinfection in the United States over the course of the next decade will in fact increase as a direct result of the availability of our technology to the market. So to the next slide, please. We may be a new entrant to the United States. This is virgin territory for us, but we compete with Trophon, and we compete with the low-level disinfectants that have been shown in the earlier slide all around the world. Benchmarking ourselves against Trophon, which is our key competitor, both companies would recognize that. In markets outside of the United States, including Australia, which is their own home market, and throughout Europe and the Middle East, and a number of countries in Southeast Asia, we disinfect more ultrasound scans than they disinfect. Their business is very US-centric because they have FDA approval. I would say that over time, our business is unquestionably going to become, I don't think, US-centric, because I think we'd maintain an equilibrium between our business outside of the United States and that within North America. But we do more business in the ultrasound space than Trophon does, and we're about to enter the marketplace that they dominate. And the advantages that our product has, once again, we're mobile, we can take high-level disinfection to where ultrasound is needed. But another great advantage is in the efficacy of our chemistry. Our contact time, as has been approved by the FDA, is 2 minutes, and in the Trophon machine, it requires 7 minutes of uninterrupted contact between the hydrogen peroxide and the probe before the probe can be taken out of the machine. Other disinfectants, the liquid soaks, they can take as long as 20 minutes. And disinfection is a rate-limiting step for the number of patients that can be seen by an ultrasound probe or an endoscope. The quicker you can disinfect it and make it available, safe and available for use on the next patient, the more patients you can see in a clinic. So it is a very, contact time for us is holy grail. One of the great benefits of TRISTEL chlorine dioxide chemistry is the speed with which it can kill all organisms and the contact time then that is permitted by regulators. And at 2 minutes, we are the fastest disinfectant and shortest contact time that has been approved by the FDA in the United States in time immemorial. And just to say again, there's no capital cost. The disinfectant is applied by the hands by a skilled healthcare worker with, in actual fact, minimal training. The hands don't break down. So if we move on to how the business builds out over the course of the next decade, we start with ultrasound. We immediately move on to seeking regulatory approval for the other two indications, OPH and ORL. We will start with OPH, where we have got approval from Canada Health. I think I mentioned earlier that it's being very actively rolled out across Canada by our partner. And one very salient point to make about the significance of this FDA approval of our de novo. It was a de novo because they advised us that we couldn't follow the more conventional route of 510K because there were no predicates. As a consequence of the FDA approving the de novo, they now have created a new classification of high-level disinfectant. And it's a high-level disinfectant that is in the form of a gel or a foam. And so we actually have created a new class of high-level disinfectant in the country, which can serve as a predicate for other companies' products in the future. But what it means for us is that we can use our TRISTEL Alt approval as the predicate for TRISTEL OPH and TRISTEL ORL, and move speedily on with seeking or putting together the data set so that we can get approval for these two other indications. It's going to take time. Everything does in the United States, but it is within our gift to have it to perform or to work within this Gantt chart that sets out a product development and regulatory approvals timeline through the next 5 years. And finally, I think we'll talk a little bit about ophthalmology. The instruments that are depicted in the slide on the left-hand side, it's the tonometer. It's used in for glaucoma assessments. It comes into contact with the cornea, and it enables an intraocular pressure to be taken. There are millions of such tonometer uses globally because of the prevalence of glaucoma. The middle instrument is a pachymeter, and the lens on the right-hand side. Each one of these instruments comes into contact with the cornea, which is a mucosa. And if we go back to that Spalding classification, they're semi-critical devices and they require high-level disinfection. But around the world, there are no high-level disinfectants, apart from Duo, where it's been registered and is widespread use, available for ophthalmic devices. Canada Health was approached maybe 2.5 years ago. We sought approval from them as a high-level disinfectant, and it was granted. And we have now launched the product in conjunction with our partner, and it is receiving a very, very, very strong reaction from the infection prevention and optometrist and ophthalmologist community in the country. Worldwide, OPH sales, which are in the United Kingdom, in Germany principally, in Australia and in New Zealand, they've reached £1 million. We are involved in 1.5 million procedures worldwide, disinfection procedures. We know that from the sales of our products. And we are informed by our partner in Canada that the number of tonometer uses requiring high-level disinfection in the United States is 16 million. So another very significant market for us to address when we get regulatory approval from the FDA for TRISTEL OPH. And on the next slide, so we haven't been sitting idle waiting for an FDA decision. I think most of you know that we got approval from the EPA a year or so ago. We now have all of the states registered for TRISTEL Duo, which is the EPA product. We have a board. We conduct our business in the United States via this board, with the same disciplines that we use at PLC level for TRISTEL. We have the three of us, Julia, who's on the call and has led the charge in the United States, and Liz, and we have an independent non-executive director, Mika Nishimura, who has a deep experience in building companies in the USA. She's Japanese, thank you, and she's also an NED at Hoya, which is a Tokyo Stock Exchange company, and actually owns Pentax and various, as an interest in infection prevention. So we're putting together the team, and on the final slide, we'll skip that. We'll be operating from Massachusetts, but Paul, if we could go to the final slide. This is the operational model. We describe it as infrastructure light. It's purposeful. This is the reason why we've appointed Parker as our exclusive manufacturer and our distribution partner. So we have two master distributors, Parker and Innova. Our role will be liaison with them, education and training of them, their people and their distributors, strategic marcoms. They've got both companies have got very good marketing teams. It's tactical marketing, it's conferencing, it's collateral production, social media, all that stuff is their responsibility. But at the strategic level, leading to key opinion leader development, we will help them with our vast deep experience of infection prevention in the ultrasound space and in the ophthalmic arena to develop their knowledge and their know-how and make the right contacts and nurture them. And of course, we will be at conferences together, joint conferencing. They have sub-distributors. We will play our part in helping educate and train them and provide key account support. And all of this is tied together by a platform that we've developed, which is a digital traceability platform which we call 3T. And whether it's for high-level disinfection or intermediate-level disinfection, every aspect of the disinfection procedure can be monitored, recorded, validated, verified by 3T. It's an app on a handheld tablet or mobile phone. It's easily deployable, it's very affordable, and it is what you need for a mobile disinfection product. You need mobile traceability. In terms of resource, a lot of the TRISTEL business development, product development, marketing and science teams have been involved in the FDA project. We will continue to transfer people in and out of North America. That doesn't necessarily mean relocating them, but they are in and out of each and every one of the tasks and specific projects and workflows that need to be done. And we are going to take 2 or 3, quite probably 3 of our very senior people out of our operational headcount and transfer them to North America from group overhead. We will recruit. We have 2 recruits that are earmarked, a strategic marketeer and a regulatory expert that would be located in the United States. And so the OPEX budget number that we have there for FY24, £350,000, what that represents is incremental spend that is directly linked to having a presence in the United States and Canada market. But of course, there is a very significant part of the corporate OPEX budget that is being devoted to this business plan. So on that note, I'll sign off. I'll hand back to Mark.
That's great. Paul, thank you very much indeed. And Liz, for updating investors today on your news. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just using the Q&A tab on the right-hand corner of your screen. But while Paul and Liz just take a couple of moments to review some of those questions you submitted already, I'd just like to remind you the recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, will be accessed via your Investor Meet Company dashboard and will notify you when they're ready for review. Paul, Liz, as you can see, you've had a number of questions from investors this afternoon. So firstly, thank you to everybody for your engagement. I wondered if I may just hand back to you guys, if I could ask you to read out the questions and give a response where it's appropriate to do so, and then I'll pick up from you at the end.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so our first question says, congratulations. Having done all the hard work in getting FDA approval, how will you prevent a predator taking the spoils? So I'm reading that as the potential for takeover. And I think the reality of that is that it would be unlikely, we feel, at this stage, having just received approval, for anyone to approach the company before the risk of building market share has been conquered, as it were. Of course, as a board, we're just custodians of value for the business. And if any offers were to come forward that were worth considering, then it would be our shareholders who we would ask to establish whether that properly represents the value in the business. But as things stand at the moment, that isn't something that we are expecting. Moving on to our next question. FDA regulatory approval is one important step in making sales, but I assume the expert buyers need to both decide that ULT is better in terms of effectiveness and or better commercial value. So what documentary material can you provide to the end customer that is convincing in proving that your product is better than your specific competitors in the US? Do you have a detailed case study of the considerations undertaken by a similar site that is convincing? Are your indirect agents capable of delivering this material, or do they have a path to call you to help close sales.
Okay, so I'll address the first part of that. The FDA has granted us market clearance, and it's granted those of our competitors that can claim high-level disinfection market clearance. So the FDA has leveled the playing ground. We are a high-level disinfectant, and Trophon is a high-level disinfectant, and that's unambiguous. It's actually one of the great benefits. Is the United States is the best market for us to do business in now that we have approval, because it's unequivocal. We are a high-level disinfectant. In Europe, there are companies that claim to be high-level disinfectants, and they produce all sorts of data, but there's no one unitary body that says you are approved or you're not approved, and they make stuff up and they present all sorts of flimsy data. It's not the case in the States. So let's just compare ourselves with Trophon. It's the simplest way that I can answer this. Our contact time is 2 minutes. Their contact time is 7 minutes. They have a capital cost of, let's say, $10,000. We have no capital cost. We have both got the same efficacy because we both have been approved as by the FDA as a high-level disinfectant. So we can kill bacterial spores, both of us. We can kill mycobacteria, both of us. We can kill organisms of concern. Both of us can kill human papillomavirus. We kill in 2 minutes. They kill in 7 minutes. I think for the skilled professional in infection prevention, that suggests that our chemistry is better than theirs, albeit that they have the same moniker as a high-level disinfectant. So we have no capital. I'll go back to those USPs of our product versus our competitors. We don't require support services. We don't require power. We don't have to have a space built into a tiny space in a sonographer's consulting room where machines are, it's difficult to find space for anything. We are a small, compact, handheld package that can sit on the console itself. So to answer that question, in the sales situation, a pitch is from our team is very straightforward, and the features and benefits are very easy to describe, and the level playing field that the FDA gives us in the United States makes this, I really do think this, an easier marketplace to penetrate than any other one that we have penetrated and succeeded in elsewhere in the United States. So that's the pitch, us versus competitor. Case studies, lots of them around the world. And it's both case studies and published science. We have, with respect to the chemistry and its use on medical devices, way over 30 published peer-reviewed publications, some of which actually do compare us with the alternatives in the ultrasound marketplace to the likes of Trophon and other companies. I'm going to touch upon something that I think is really significant. If you can think back to the console and the endocavity probe, there was the pink bit that goes inside the body that requires high-level disinfection, but it's attached to the console by a cord, and the cord is attached to the console upon which there's a keyboard and there's a screen. It's well documented that not only the bit that goes inside the body, but the cord that hangs around the sonographer's neck and the keyboard, and you keep going there, Paul. There we go. One more. Next one. There we go. On the right-hand side, the cord, the console itself. There are probe holders on either side where you put the probe. They are very highly contaminated. The keyboard is contaminated. The screen, which is often a touch screen on modern consoles, is contaminated. What we can deliver to the user is a compelling 360-degree answer to the disinfection of all of those surface areas. The FDA has given us approval for the pink bit. The EPA has given us approval for the blue bits. The hospital, the clinic, the IVF clinic can buy one product. It's not one product, it's two products, but with great similarity, with the same training package, tied together by 3T, and it can do everything that is in screen before us right now. I think, and from my experience of selling to hospitals over many, many years, that is a very, very compelling proposition. Are our indirect agents, the master distributors and then the sub-distributors, capable of delivering this material? Well, I think the Parker and Innova get it, and they're already pretty expert by dint of us being at conferences together. We are exhibiting at the end of June at the American Infection Prevention Society meeting. We were last week in Vancouver at the Canadian Infection Prevention Society with Innova. They get it. It's a very good question. Will the small distributor in a small county in Iowa get it? Well, we need to provide them with good materials, great collateral. A very important part of this is that we have extensive materials compatibility with every single ultrasound manufacturer in the world. The first question that gets asked by any prospective user is your product compatible with my Philips XYZ model? And for us to be able to say, well, go to our website, go to materials or instrument compatibility page, scroll down or sort by Philips and find your model, and you will find that we've been approved by them. And if you want to double check that and counter reference it, go to Philips website and we give you a link, and that makes it easy for you. All of those tools are available. They're available to our master distributors and to their sub-distributors. And that's, it's part of our asset base, really. It's that domain knowledge and expertise that's been built up over many, many years.
Okay, next question. The US market is no doubt highly competitive, and after so many years without a new product, will TriStel's pricing strategy reflect this? Will TriStel be able to maintain current margins on new sales?
Okay, so I would imagine that the United States market is looking for a new product. Our pricing strategy is to be competitive with Trophon because they're our benchmark product for the high-level disinfectant. And for the other low-level disinfectants, we'll be price competitive with them. And in terms of margins for Parker, they will match ours, but we are actually not involved in the margin consideration because we are being rewarded by a royalty from net sales. So I'm very comfortable that Parker will make very strong gross profit margins, but it is not actually our primary concern because the royalty is linked to their sales.
And for ourselves, of course, because it's a royalty, it's 100% gross margin, so it won't dilute our corporate margins. Next question. You mentioned you expect to grow the number of all ultrasound procedures that elect high-level disinfecting. Just wondering, are we looking at 1% per year in favor of that mix? And where do you think it levels out? How far can it go from the current 20%?
Well, we've in our modeling assumed that 20-80 split shifts year in and year out over the course of the next, I think our model goes out 6 or 7 years by 1% a year. It's rather arbitrary. It's our best guess. We are pretty confident that we will shift the user to elect high-level disinfectant more often than they would have in the past because of the ease of use of our product and its affordability.
Okay, next question. Are you going to be working with Parker in the UK too, helping to increase their gel sales?
The answer to that is most definitely not. They've got global distribution. I don't think they need us, and it's not our core business. We're a fantastic adjunct to what they do in the United States, but it doesn't work outside of the United States.
Next question. Many congratulations on the FDA approval. Has the FDA assured you that it will accept Duo Ult as a predicate such that you will not need to go the de novo route for Duo OPH and Duo HLD? I think that means ENT. Will that necessarily translate into much reduced supporting evidence requirements?
We have that assurance. It's within the legal framework. So yes, we have a predicate for OPH and ORL. Will it reduce the level of data that were required? Most definitely it will. The composition is the same, the formulation is the same, the packaging is the same. We've established stability. You have to present to the agency real-time stability. If you want a 2-year shelf life, you have to wait 2 years before you can go to market. All of those things are in our data set that has already been accepted by the FDA. So I do believe it will accelerate the future approval of these 2 additional indications.
And then just on that same point, why have you decided to stagger the OPH and ORL FDA applications rather than submitting simultaneously?
It's a question of resource. OPH is well understood by us now, having got approval from Canada, and it is a growing activity for us worldwide. The instruments are very simple, they're very small. These endoscopes are more complex, and so it's the easier door to push upon.
And did I hear you correctly in that you believe Nanosonics has a 50% plus share of the market for ultrasound scan procedures in the US, i.e. well over 100 million procedures? That's an incredible share.
That's what the slide shows, and you're absolutely right. The number of consoles that they believe they can address in the United States, they address a half, or they have half of the number of potential installations that they believe is their TAM in the United States. So they say that they have 50% market share. Do they do 50% of all the ultrasound scans in the country? I think of the high-level disinfection ultrasound scan. So it's 20% of 215 million, not 50% of 250 million. So it's 50% of 20% of 215 million. Yes, I think they probably do that number of procedures, are involved in that number of disinfection procedures a year. It corroborates to the data that they provide through their investor relations messaging. But it's 20% of, it's 20% of 215 million times 50%. Yep.
Okay, next question. You mentioned Parker's presence in Latin America. Would you have any estimates that you can share for the addressable market opportunity and procedure volume in any of the key LATAM geographies? And to what extent will the FDA approval help you access those markets? We've
kind of got a rule of thumb. We're not very familiar with Latin America. We have a presence, a distributor that's doing reasonably well in Chile, but it's not a continent that we've yet invested time and resource in, principally because you need FDA approval. That's what they look to throughout the continent. As a rule of thumb, I think it's 10 to 20% of the US. It can be viewed as being sort of representative of South America. In the same way, there's a rule of thumb. People talk about Canada being 10% of the United States. It's very vague, but I think it is a decent rule of thumb. But with FDA approval, there's not a country in South or the Caribbean, Central and South America that will not be accessible to us in reasonably short order.
With respect to Nanosonics, what are you anticipating their response to be to your approval, if at all? Is it the case that you think there is enough to go for the both of you?
We coexist with them in Australia, which is their home market. We gained approval from the TGA, which is the regulatory body in Australia, I think in 2011. We've shared the spoils in that country. There are lots of hospitals that have got a trophon machine and use a TriStell high-level disinfectant at the same time. Because we're quicker, we may be used through the day, and then to sort of appease the requirements of some individuals within the hospital, they might put the probes through a machine at the end of the day, because it's kind of a belt and braces, makes everybody feel more comfortable if something's happened by machine. I think there's more than enough space in the United States market for us both to continue to prosper.
And just on that, we're being asked here, would you expect trophon to engage in a price war?
I'm not sure what's the win in that for them.
Okay. Next question. How much is success now a function of breaking into procurement networks in the US and changing clinical behaviours? What can be done to help change awareness amongst physicians? And how do you overcome the audit trail element, i.e. autoclaving, whilst not very flexible, provides a black and white readout tape to confirm that a surface is sterile?
Procurement, we will work our way through. We have partners that work with procurement all the time. With respect to the second part of that question, the medical instruments that we're disinfecting are very different to those that are autoclaved. Autoclaved instruments, or autoclaving for those unfamiliar with the term, means sterilization through heat. And you can heat a stainless steel forceps, but you can't heat an ultrasound probe. It will melt. So these are instruments that our whole marketplace is driven by the disinfection of heat-sensitive medical instruments. Having a very simple indicator that the instrument has been disinfected is complex with these complex heat-sensitive medical instruments such as ultrasound probes. But our 3T traceability process, which observes each and every one of the steps of the procedure, gets as close as is possible to recording the temperatures that is done in an autoclave, to say the temperature was held for long enough at the right temperature. It's not a very succinct answer, but through 3T we get very close to the level of validation that can be achieved in an autoclave.
Another quick question about trophon. Can the trophon system actually disinfect a mobile ultrasound system?
I don't think it can. We are in touch with the two manufacturers, work quite closely with the two manufacturers of mobile ultrasound systems. And unless it's held inside the chamber by way of some kind of, cradle, I don't think that is possible.
Okay, and now our last question. You've stated that trophon is your main competitor with approximately 50% of the existing market. Given that trophon uses a machine and that this machine has a useful life of about 7 years, what incentive is there for hospitals to switch before the machine needs replacing? And what chance is there that trophon will start to deeply discount the machines in order to lock in customers for a further 7 years?
There are, according to Nanosonics' excellent investor relations information that you can find on their website, something like, I think it's 27,000 installations or machines around the United States. And they also age them. So they give the age profile of them. And I think it's something like 50% of them are more than 7 years old now. Now, that for them, I think, is a revenue opportunity, on the assumption that no one is going to move from trophon to anything else, because at the moment there is no alternative to trophon, really. But it means it's an aging fleet. And we know from experience, when a machine is coming to the end of its useful life and it's starting to break down, or maybe the manufacturer doesn't want to continue to service it or provide warranty cover, that's a decision-making point. It's a decision-making point for the infection prevention team and for procurement. Well, this is a moment where we can look at something new. We just heard that FDA has approved TriStell. We've seen TRISTEL at conferences overseas. We need to replace our trophon machine. Now is the point in time to do a review of the alternatives that are available. So I think that the marketplace is ripe for a new entrant that has FDA approval and has all of the advantages that TRISTEL does.
Okay, and one last question's just popped up. The presentation seems to focus upon equipment for human medicine. Do you see a market in animal health?
Ultrasound is widely used in animal health. It's not our focus. It could well be, and maybe a company like Henry Schein that is big in animal health might approach us, as they have here in the United Kingdom, in fact, and said, can we carry the ultrasound duo product into animal? There are possibilities there. It's not our focus at the moment.
Okay, that's the end of our questions. If anybody has not had the opportunity to log their question, or it comes to them later, if you could email us via tristel@walbrookpr.com, and I know our colleagues at Walbrook will send those questions on to us for answering. And of course, as you'll see, if you would like a link to the FinCap research note, then again, email tristel@walbrookpr.com. and they will send you a link.
That's great, Liz. Paul, thank you very much indeed. And as you say, you've taken all questions from investors. So thank you once again for everybody's engagement this afternoon. Paul, Liz, I know investor feedback will be important to you both following today's news. I wondered if I made, Paul, before redirect investors to give you their thoughts and expectations, if I could just ask you for a few closing comments.
I just like to say that I think this heralds an enormous turning point. No, it's not a turning point. We don't need to turn. This is a moment where TRISTEL can accelerate its growth. It can continue its profitability that we have been able to achieve in the rest of the world, possibly exponentially. I think it's a remarkable moment. Not many of you may know, but we actually started the business 30 years ago with an ambition, and actually the only thing that we bought into was the rights to get an FDA approval, but we had $250,000 of capital from our founding shareholder, and it's taken an awful long time to get to this point. So I've lived and breathed it, and we have an organization that is very, very skilled and capable. We have a brilliant technology. And I really think that this is a moment to rejoice for all shareholders and stakeholders in the company.
That's great. Paul, Liz, thank you once again for updating investors. Could I please ask investors on the call not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you in order that you can provide your feedback so the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of TRISTEL PLC, I would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. Good afternoon to you all.